Welcome to Awdhesh Academy. Our topic for today's essay is Alternative Technologies for a Climate Change Resilient India. Now this appeared in the 2018 mains, so let's start with a brain mapping first. Now first of all, think and understand the topic. You have to talk about alternative technologies. So don't just restrict to alternative energy resources and talk about renewable resources. That is, yes, one aspect of it, but not the only aspect of it. So you need to talk about alternative technology in general. And for that, why do you need the alternate technology? You need to talk about that. That is the problems with conventional technology. And then you need to talk about climate change as well. So you need to address the problem of climate change. Now, when you are talking about the alternate technology, you need to present the ideas to solve the problems which happen due to the conventional technologies. So, you need to tell what are the technologies, then how can they solve the problems, and how feasible are they. So, let's start with taking up each topic and discussing them. First of all, let's talk about the climate change. Now first let's see the effects, that is, what do we see as a result of climate change. So we are finding there are more floods and more droughts than ever. Like you can talk about the Uttarakhand floods here, the Kerala floods, the Chennai floods, the drought situation in parts of Rajasthan and Maharashtra and Gujarat. You can talk about how farmers are forced to commit suicide because of the floods and droughts which happen. So you can talk about that. Now related to it is also the groundwater depletion problem, the global warming, then the next can be the depletion of glaciers around the globe. You can talk about Arctic, Antarctic, and also the Himalayan glaciers with respect to India. So you can talk about all these effects. Now let's discuss about the causes of the climate change. Now the first can be our energy resources. Like the conventional energy resources, we rely mainly on the coal and fossils, and this accounts for 70% of our energy that we consume. So this is a major challenge, and this emits a lot of carbon dioxide which is causing the global warming. So you can talk about energy, then you can talk about our transportation mediums. The estimate is about 20% of the global carbon dioxide emission happen because of the conventional transportation medium. Then you can talk about industrialization and mining, and these account for 30% of the CO2 emission, plus they also cause water pollution and air pollution. Next can be infrastructure and land use. That is, you distribute the land unjudiciously, you give it to the industries, the land which is agricultural, that is fertile land, or from the forest. When you give that part to industries, you spoil the wildlife, also the ecological balance and the climate. So this is also important, that is land use. Also, when you create and build different infrastructure, different buildings, you have to make them environmental friendly. That is, don't make a building on a very fertile land or which is not fit for the building. Generally, it is estimated that when you create an earthquake prone building, it requires almost 50% of the funds extra to make the building earthquake prone. So a lot of builders don't put that extra effort, and that's why the buildings collapse due to earthquakes and other natural calamities. So you need to have a proper infrastructure, guidelines and proper regulations for infrastructure so that we do not create a disbalance in climate because of making infrastructure in unusual places. Also, you can talk about our agricultural practices. Most of our farmers are uneducated and they do not use effective agricultural and farming ways. So you can talk about that here. Also, you can talk about crop burning, which is a major cause of air pollution in lots of parts of the country. You can talk about the pollution in Delhi. The main reason for it was the crop burning in the neighboring states of Punjab and Haryana. So you can talk about that here. Also, the extensive use of chemical fertilizers and insecticides are making the soil infertile. So you have to talk about that as well. So these are the causes of the climate change and these are the effects. These happen because of using the conventional technology medium. Like energy, we have talked about coal and fossils. When talking about transportation, you can talk about the privately owned vehicles using petrol and diesel, which cause a lot of problem because of the carbon dioxide emissions. While talking about industries, you can talk about how harmful the waste produced by the industries can be for the aquamarine life. It can pollute water, the air, and spread some diseases as well. You can talk about these. Then while talking about infrastructure, you also have the issue of lighting, heating, and cooling appliances. So all these also attribute to the pollution levels and the carbon dioxide emissions. So you can talk about these causing global warming, that is in part of infrastructure. Then we have talked about land use. Then in agriculture, we have talked about how our farming methods are old and obsolete and we need to change them. So now let's talk about the alternatives to these fields so that we can reduce the effects of climate change. Let's start with talking about alternate energy. So with respect to energy, we know that carbon related coal and petroleum cause a lot of damage to the environment. So we need to find renewable energy sources, that is solar, wind, biomass, geothermal, hydro, electricity, and so on. Because the coal and petroleum are limited and they need a lot of time, millions of years to form. So that resource is limited, and with the increase in our population and the industrial demand, we need to have more energy sources. Also, since we import a lot of our petroleum products from foreign countries, we can reduce those import and use that money for our own welfare purposes if we start producing our own electricity, and that is what we can do using the renewable resources. Because like Gujarat, Rajasthan, parts of Maharashtra and Andhra Pradesh, all these are huge sources for solar power and we can generate a lot of solar power in these areas. Also, with respect to the wind energy, we have a lot of potential. And talking about hydroelectric power, we are only using 20% of our potential. So here lies a lot of potential which we can bank on to produce some electricity which is homegrown, and so that we need not import from outside the world, but we can produce at our own country. you can talk about the seriousness of our government to address this problem of renewable energy and taking some alternative steps. We have already formed the International Solar Alliance. We are also targeting to produce 175,000 gigawatts of energy by 2022, while the current installed capacity is only 69,000. So we are almost trying to double our capacity by 2022. So this is a good step. So you must applaud it. Plus you can suggest some more ways. Another way here could be nuclear power. The advantage by using nuclear fission to produce electricity is it requires less land. It doesn't emit CO2. It just emits helium as its exhaust. So this method is very useful. The only thing is you need to make it cost effective and also safe for the environment and also for the people living in the surrounding areas of the nuclear plants. So this is one area we must work on apart from our renewable resources. Now let's talk about alternative technologies in the field of transport. Now we already know the importance of public transport. So encouraging the public transport, making them accessible, cheaper, so that people use public transports more. Also, we can look forward to having luxurious public transport as well, which may cost more, so that the upper class who use the privately owned cars also go into the public transport. So this is a very important area which we must work on. Next can be the eco-friendly battery operated cars and rickshaws. E-rickshaws are already very common in a lot of parts of the country. We must also encourage the use of electric cars which require proper charging stations, and they need to be cost effective as well, because right now electric cars are expensive, charging stations are not there, and that is why it is not feasible to own an electric car. So the government may look forward to subsidize electric cars, make more charging stations so that electric cars are also very popular. Here we can also talk about using cycles. Not just this is nothing new, but also it can be a great exercise. The elite, the rich people do not use cycles because they do not see it as a social symbol, but it can be a symbol of change and the symbol of the resilient climate change India. Like we can talk about the Holland, the Netherlands Prime Minister using cycle to go to his office. Now let's talk about the alternative technologies for industries. Now industries give a lot of water waste, so water treatment and waste treatment in general should be the main concern for the alternative technologies in the field of industry and mining. Also, land use which was related to industries and manufacturing needs to be addressed. We must have proper environmental laws. Also, the corruption needs to be addressed, which is a major problem in land use patterns. Industries may be encouraged to recycle and reuse their wastes as well. Also, you must promote afforestation by the industries and mining companies. Next, let's discuss about alternative technologies for water. Now, water in general and drinking water in particular has become a major cause of concern for us. Even in situations of floods and droughts, there is an acute shortage of drinking water. So, floods and droughts cannot be related to drinking water. So, we must have proper piping and transport system for water so that we can transport water without causing any leakage. There is a huge loss of drinking water due to problems of piping and which causes leakage. That is, we can reduce the loss of water through leakages by using proper piping and transportation system. Also, we need water treatment plants. Also, we need to educate and encourage our citizens and our people to use and reuse the water for their purposes. We need to use water judiciously so that there is no shortage of water in acute times. Like, you can give the example of Cape Town and the day zero there. Like in October 2017, the mayor of Cape Town declared that Cape Town will run short of water by March 2018, and that was given as the day zero. But since then, Cape Town has been using their water resources much more judiciously. Until now, day zero has not been reached, thankfully, because of the commitment of the people to save water. And you learn from the example of Cape Town how in the situation of crisis we are saving water. So let's not have that situation when the crisis comes, and let's work before that happens. India is a peninsula and we have Indian Ocean surrounding us. So we have a lot of ocean and sea water. So we can work on desalination so that ocean and sea water which is salty and not fit for drinking can be used for domestic purposes. So we can get that technology from Israel. We have already had a contract and agreement with Israel few months ago, so you can talk about that here. Now let's talk about agriculture. Now the main problem of agriculture is irrigation, because in India we rely more on monsoons, so we can have proper irrigation and less wastage of water for irrigation if we harvest rainwater and indulge in less resource extensive farming practices. Also, to avoid the problem of crop burning, we can have biomass fuel, because mostly it is seen that particularly in northern India, that farmers first grow rice and then they grow wheat. So when they shift, they burn their fields and that causes the environmental air pollution. So we can address that problem if we create biomass fuel from those farm waste. Now the government may have more biomass plants so that we can first make energy out of the waste and also get rid of our pollution problem due to crop burning. Also, we must educate our farmers so that they use modern practices so that they can yield more produce and also they can have less resources to put in their fields. Farmers' education is a key thing, because first of all, the farmers must be encouraged to produce more yield out of the same land, and secondly, when they are educated, they'll use proper material, and like farmers nowadays are using fertilizers, insecticides and chemicals which harm the soil and spoil the soil fertility forever. So we can encourage and educate our farmers to use modern organic ways. There is a field called Agro Ecology. According to a UN report, African nations and African farmers are using this technology to almost double their yield. By using this technology, they are having a natural environment for crop rotation and crop farming. So this is helping them increase and almost double their yield in just 3 to 10 years of this implementation. So we can also encourage our farmers to use these practices. Now let's discuss about some quotations which will help you in this essay. Earth provides enough to satisfy every man's needs, but not every man's greed. This was said by Mahatma Gandhi. Next we have, the earth does not belong to us, we belong to the earth. Next is, we are using resources as if we had two planets, not one. There can be no plan B because there is no planet B. This was said by the former UN Secretary Ban Ki-moon. Next is, good environmental policy is good economic policy. Next is, the future will either be green or not at all. Next we have, to permit irresponsible authorities is to sell disaster. And the last is, only when the last tree has died and the last river has been poisoned and the last fish been caught will we realize we cannot eat money. So using these points, you can talk about alternative technologies for a climate change resilient India. The main concern is using sustainable, cleaner and greener energy and technologies to solve our climatic problems. So that's it in this lesson. I hope all these points help you to write an excellent essay. You can write your own essay and we shall give you a feedback on it on our practice question option given on our website. So keep practicing, keep writing and keep learning. Thank you so much for watching.